everyone. A very peculiar kind of question is asked in CAT every year, or more or less every year, or if not in CAT, in one of the exams, you will definitely find it. It is those election-based questions where one or more people are standing for election. So you learn different terms and terminology. What is margin, and what do you mean by the winner? The difference between the winner and the loser. How many votes are invalid, and all these things, right? These are the different terms and terminologies we come across in these kind of questions. So this time kind of questions will have no concepts, but we'll directly take 5 examples and we'll try and understand them. So if I look at the first question, they have told us in a 2-candidate election, 10% of the voters did not cast their ballot. That means 10% did not even go to vote. So only 90% voted. 10% of the votes cast were found invalid. That means out of the people who went to vote, out of that 10% became invalid. Okay. The winning candidate received 54% of the valid votes and a 1620 vote majority. Find the number of voters on the voter list who would have registered to vote. We want to find how many people were registered to vote. Okay. So because of these two numbers, which are good 10% numbers, what I would do is start with 100x. Let the total registered voters be 100x. Now, if total is 100x, tell me 10% did not go to vote only. So therefore, how many people voted? So voted would be 90x. 10% of 100x is 10x. So that will go out. 90x is left. Out of these 90x, again 10% vote were invalid. Whatever mistake they made or whatever reasons, the votes were invalid. So we would say valid votes would be 90x minus 9x. Where did I get 9x from? 10% of 90x. 10% of 90x is 9x. So this becomes 81x. Leave it here 1 second. Okay, now a lot of students do an unnecessary calculation, which I'm going to teach you how to avoid it. The winner got 54% of the valid votes. The winner got 54% of the valid votes. That means these votes. So a lot of people start calculating 54% of 81x. No need. You're wasting your time unnecessarily. And obviously, therefore, the loser, because there were only 2 people in the election, the loser will get 46% because 100% is total. When we say 100%, anything is 100%, right? If the winner gets 54, the loser gets 46. Therefore, the difference between them becomes 8%. I'm going to teach you one more easier way of getting this 8 directly. Just look at this number. This is 54. If both had got 50-50, they would have got equal. If one has got 54, which means he has got 4 extra and the other person will get 4 less. So the difference between them directly becomes 8. And that's an easier way of making that 8. So you don't need to write this 54, 46 and then 8. You can directly look at 54 and say it is 4 more than 50. Therefore, the difference between the two will become 8. So we will now get 8%. 8% of 81x because 8% of the valid votes, right? So 8% of 81x is 1620. I can see 81 goes in 162. So I'll get x is equal to 1620 multiplied by 100 upon 8 into 81, right? 81 2s is 162, 20. 4 2s are 4 5s and 2 1s are 250. So x is 250. Please do not make a mistake of marking the answer as 250. Always read what is asked in these questions very carefully. Find the number of people on the voter list who had registered to vote. That means the initial voters, 100x. We had started with 100x. So 100x will be 100 into 250, which will be 25,000. Right? So that's the answer for this question. So this question covers most of the basic concepts of election-based questions, where there are voters, how many people voted for it, what are the valid votes, all those things get covered in this. And hence, total number of voters is 25,000. Let's have a look at the next question. In the second question, they have told us in an election, 25% of the total votes are invalid. They did not tell us how many people did not come to vote and all that. They have directly told us 25% were invalid. If the winning candidate got 62.5% of the valid votes and 15,000 valid votes more than the losing candidate. So this 15,000 is nothing but what we just did in the previous question as margin. The difference between the two is 15,000. So if I start with the same method, I have just one step lesser in this question. If I say total voters is 100x. So the valid votes will be 75x because 25% are invalid, so 75x. Now, let's try and learn the shortcut which I explained in the previous question. The winner has got 62.5%, which is obviously 12.5 more than half. If they both had got half, it would have been exactly same. So it's 12.5% more than half. That means the loser will get 12.5% less than half. So the difference between the two will become 25%. So this method of finding the difference becomes very easy. So difference is 25%. And that number has been given as 15,000. So 25%, 25 upon 100 multiplied by 75x is given as 15,000. What do we want to find? We want to find the total number of valid votes. Valid votes are 75x. So sometimes you have to just pay attention what is asked and can I make my calculation faster? So no point calculating x. Let's directly calculate 75x. So 75x is 15,000 into 100 upon 25. So 25 ones are 25 fours are. That is give 100 and 15 fours are 60. So 75x will become 60,000. As I said, no need to calculate anything. 75x is 60,000. Tells me what? That the number of valid votes were 60,000. In this question, if they had asked for, say, total number of voters, then we would have to just calculate 100x. So if 75x is 60,000, 25x would be 20,000 and 100x would have become 80,000. So if they had asked the total number of voters, then that answer would have been 80,000, right? Let's go ahead to the next question. The next question is on similar lines, but just given a little bit differently. All questions of election-based type will be on similar lines. Okay, there are two candidates in election. 20% votes did not, 20% of the voters did not vote. 320 votes were declared invalid. So here this is given as a real number. So instead of giving a percentage, they've said 320 votes were invalid. The winning candidate got 42% of the voter list. Now that's also a very different way of giving the question. So let's pay attention very carefully to this. And he won the election by 500 votes. So let's make the same way, start the same way. Let the total number of voters be 100x. 20% did not vote. So voted would be 80x. 20% of 100x is 20x. So that is gone. Voted is 80x. 320 votes were declared invalid. So what will be valid? 80x minus 320 will become valid, right? And the winning candidate got 42% from the voter list. Now that's very, very important. What did the winning candidate get? 42% of this, not 42% of this. So you can't use the shortcut which I explained behind it. You can't say, okay, because the winner anyway can't get 42% of whoever is voted. Otherwise, he will not win only, right? So the winner has got 42x because he has got 42% of 100x. So the loser will get this number, the total number of people who voted minus 42x. So loser will get 80x minus 320 minus 42x. That will become 38x minus 320. And the difference between the two is given as 500. Difference is, that means the loser gets lesser votes. So winner is 42x. Loser is 38x minus 320. If I add 500 over here, they both become equal, right? So 42x minus 38x will become 4x is equal to 180, 500 minus 320. So x is 180 divided by 4, x is 45. Let's read very carefully. Find the number of registered voters. That means they want the value of 100x. So 100x will be 4,500, which will be your final answer. Interesting question. The data was given in a slightly different way, and that is why you have to be careful over here. Okay, let's have a look at the next question. The next question involves some amount of ratios also. So pay attention. In election, there were four candidates. This time there was not a single candidate, there were four candidates. 80% of the registered voters cast their votes. One of the candidates received 30% of the casted votes, while the other three candidates received the remaining casted votes in the ratio 1:2:3. So, first of all, 80% voted. Out of that, one of them got 30% and the remaining got 70%. Now, when I was reading this question, the first thing which I noticed that this is not a multiple of 7. 1:2:3 is not a multiple of 7. 1 plus 2 plus 3 is 6. So I knew I would get fractions. And to avoid that fraction, see what did I do? Or you can do it in a one or two steps later. Okay, I always explain this thing. Pay attention carefully. Suppose if I start with total as 100x, right? So 100x, sorry. Total is 100x. So voted would be 80x because 80% have come, registered voters casted their votes. One of them, they didn't say the winner, one of them got 30% out of this. So say, let's call it, suppose the four people were A, B, C, D. So A got 30% of 80x. 30% of 80x is 24x. That means the remaining B plus C plus D have got 56x. Now we can see 56 is not divisible by 6, which means if I start doing question at this step, I should know that I will get fractions. Not that fractions are wrong, but it will be unnecessarily difficult to solve or waste of time. 56 is divisible by 2. The only problem, it is not divisible by 3. So what I would do in an exam situation, even if I've done this much, no, I would just multiply everything quickly by 3. That means I would take the total voters as 300x. This would become 240x. This would become 72x. And this would become 168x. Advantage of that, now when I do for B, C, D, I will not get a fraction. So how much will B get now? B will get 1/6 of 168. How much is 1/6 of 168? Let's do it over here. 1/6 of 168, 6 2s are and 6 8s are. So B will get 28x. C will get double of that. That will be 56x. And this one will get 84x, right? So look at this. This person has got 72, 28, 56, and 84. Who's the winner? D is the winner, 84x. And the winner received 2512 votes more than the candidate who got the second highest votes. That means the difference between the winner and the loser, a second highest, is given as 2512. So what my equation will be, 84x minus 72x is 2512, which will be 12x is equal to 2512. What do you want to find? Find the number of registered voters. That means I want to find 300x. So instead of finding completely x, let's just divide by 4. 4 3s are 4 6s are 24. 4 2s are 8. And 4 8s are 32. So 3x is 628. Again, these are small things that I did not find x. Why? Because I want to find 300x. So I can just multiply now both sides by 100. So 300x will be 628 into 100, which will be 62800. Total number of voters will be 62800. I hope you all understood why I started with 300x and not with 100x. In fact, if somebody had realized it immediately, so I started with 100. I realized I'm getting fractions, went back one step. Instead of doing the remaining question in fractions, I preferred going back one step, getting those numbers as whole numbers by taking the 300x. And I think the calculation became easier because of that. Let's look at the next question. So the next question is a slightly more difficult question. So pay attention very carefully to this question. 2000 people voted on a resolution. So whether election, resolution doesn't matter. Okay. 12.5% of the votes were invalid. So initially 2000 people voted. 12.5 is 1 by 8. 1 by 8 of 2000 is 250. If you can do these things orally, things will be great for you. If not, you'll have to do it in rough work. 250 votes were invalid, which means only 1750 people voted. Pay attention carefully further. The supporters of the resolution called for a repoll. So whoever is supporting that resolution, they said, no, there's some problem. Let's have a repoll. To which the opponents of the resolution agreed. The opponents also said, no problem, let's do a repoll. This time, 20% of the votes were invalid. So out of 2000 this time, 20% of 2000 is 400. 400 votes are invalid. So 1600 people voted. The opponents decreased by 16.66%. 16.66% as a fraction is 1 by 6. So opponents decreased by 1 by 6 and the motion was passed by a margin that was 100% more than by which it was previously rejected. So initially the motion was rejected by some margin. This time it was passed by a margin which was double. 100% more is always double. When I say 100% more, something is 100% more, it means it is double than what was previously rejected. Okay, how many people voted against the resolution in the repoll? So we want to know how many people voted against. So let's put it in two parts. For me, this 1/6 was very, very important, and that is where I have started my question with. I have said opponents. Let in the first case, when the elections happen in the first case, let the total number of opponents be 6x. And you will understand why 6x, because of this 1/6. Therefore, people who voted for, that means who were supporters, right? People who were supporters will become 1750 minus 6x, right? Because if 6x have voted against, remaining have voted for, because these two did not vote only or were invalid or whatever. So what was the margin in this case? Remember, initially it was rejected. Rejected means the opponents were more. So margin was 6x minus 1750 minus 6x, which is 12x minus 1750. Let's leave it as it is. This was the initial part. Now what will happen to the opponents? Opponents will become 5x because they have reduced by 1/6. So if opponents were 6x, now opponents will become 5x. Okay. Now in this question, a lot of people will say supporters will also come from here. No, supporters will not come from here. Supporters will come from this number. If 5x are opponents, remaining all are supporters, that is 1600 minus 5x are supporters. This time the election was won by the supporters. So this time the new margin, let's call it as M1, is 1600 minus 5x minus 5x. So M1 is 1600 minus 10x. And they have told us very clearly that the second margin is double of the first margin. That means 1600 minus 10x is double of the first margin, which is 12x minus 1750. Okay, let's do the calculation very carefully. This will become 24x. 10 will go on the other side, so it will become 34x. Right? 1750 into 2 is 3500. It will come on this side, will become positive 3500. 3500 plus 1600 will become 5100. If I solve this, x comes out to be 150, right? It will go in 17, 17, 2s are 17, 3s are, and x comes out to be 150. What have they asked for? Let's read very carefully. How many people voted against the resolution in the repoll? Opponents. That means they've asked for 5x. So if x is 150, 5x will be 750, and that will be the total number of voters who opposed it in the repoll. They could have asked you so many things. They could have asked you for how many opposed in the initial part, or supporters in the initial part, or whatever. They could have asked for a lot of things, but they've asked for this number. How many people voted against the resolution in the repoll, which will be 750. So with that, we come to the end of this video where we've done 5 questions on the election type of questions. We've covered most of the areas. Thank you for watching.